Once in a while in these NHL entry drafts, you get yourselves a prospect that is objectively really talented, but we don't know where they're going to get taken because the way in which their talent presents itself isn't the most obvious, nor is it the most flashy. Today's episode of Why I Want, it is Saturday, 10 a.m. PST, so we are continuing with our prospect show, goes over a guy playing in Russia. This is arguably one of the better Russian players in the draft, not named Matvei Michkov, but he's a guy that, depending on who you ask, you may see him projected to go a lot earlier or a lot later. There's a lot of variance here. We're heading over onto Lokomotiv Yaroslavl in the KHL and talking about the guy who a lot of scouts and analysts say is the best defenseman player in this draft, DMITRI SIMASHEV. SIMASHEV, as we had said, is a big dude. He's 6'4", 201, a left-handed defenseman, born on February 4th, 2005. And as the title and the intro goes out there and talks about, this is probably the player with the best defensive ability amongst all the D-men in this draft. He's a big dude, he's a very fluid skater, and his proficiency on back checks and in his own zone is second to none. However, the caveat with this player is that his offensive production really isn't there compared to the likes of David Reinbacher and or Axel Sandin Pellikka. He had 29 games played for Yaroslavl's MHL team, so the junior league, where he had only 10 points. In the regular KHL, he had 18 games played, but he had 0 points over there. But the thing is, while the points may not look all too great, there's reason to believe that these really aren't indicative of the caliber of talent and offensive potency that could blossom in his game long term. And depending on who you ask, as we had said, there are a lot of differing opinions as to where you could go with this player. SIMASHEV, if you take a look at the consolidated ranking, the average rank of all these scouting outlets is at 22nd overall, with the lowest being down there at number 72, Draft Prospects Hockey. You also have yourselves TSN and Bob McKenzie, they have him at 35, Future Considerations has him at 37, and Craig Button has him at number 49. But there are some outlets like Elite Prospects, they have him at number 10, McKean's has him at 9, and Dobber Prospects also has him at 9. So, where exactly is the divergence in the opinions about SIMASHEV, and where can this take us into the next few years? Let's talk about him in today's episode of Why I Want, and go over what exactly makes him great. As we had said, SIMASHEV is a primarily defensively minded defender, and it's part of the reason he played the way he did in the KHL specifically. A lot of scouting outlets and analysts who would go out there and talk about this guy would note how in the first few games, first few months of the KHL season, SIMASHEV was playing a very tentative type of game. He wasn't allowing himself to play the way he's able to play. And if we really want to get an extended look as to how this came about, let's go over on to Dobber Prospects, because the December 2022 report written by Jordan Harris goes out there and articulates it very well. The scouting report talks about how SIMASHEV was one of the first draft-eligible players to make the KHL this season, and he did it by cracking a top spot as the 7th defenseman on one of the best teams in the KHL. It's no fluke that SIMASHEV earned a spot in the KHL to start the year. He's a huge defenseman at 6'4", 200 pounds, who skates quite well for his size and plays a very calm and composed game. Early in the KHL season, though, it didn't look like SIMASHEV belonged. He looked like he was a player who was afraid. Making one wrong move would send him back down to junior hockey, as he always made the simplest play and never carried the puck up ice. At times, SIMASHEV looked like a slow skater, but he was just having a really slow time processing the game as it was too fast for him. Things got better, and as the season went along, SIMASHEV's game started to develop and blossom. SIMASHEV started to get comfortable, and it looked like the KHL pace was starting to slow down for him as he started to make quicker reads, take chances, and become more involved both offensively and defensively. The writer here on Dobber Prospects started to see how good his skating was for a player of his size at his age, and how agile he could be. Simply put, DMITRI SIMASHEV has improved steadily as the season has gone on, and is now looking like a player who belongs at Russia's top level. The next paragraph goes over the actual scouting report. His game so far is centered around being a very strong and dependable defender. He plays a very safe game, but he's very effective. SIMASHEV's defensive prowess comes from reading the play effectively and using his big, athletic frame to shut down puck carriers. Due to his size, mobility, and reach, Simashev has an advantage in the transition game defending oncoming rushes. He can stay closer to the center of the ice, which eliminates the highly desired lanes opposing forwards want to take to generate a scoring chance. This ends up forcing players to dump the puck in or go around the outside and try to get by him. Simashev reads, reacts, and uses his mobility to reach the cutoff outside lanes and angle the player into the boards. He uses his strength and physicality to separate the player from the puck and kill the play. He just doesn't defend a rush well, he's also effective along the boards and behind his own net. There are a lot more things written about here. It's a very detailed scouting report. Link is in the description as always. But let's skip over to the end and read what Jordan Harris concludes about Simashev. He should project quite favorably into the NHL. Players who have the defensive instincts he does, in addition to the combination of size, movement, and competitiveness he possesses, usually find a place in the NHL. These players usually make a living playing the hard minutes at even strength and being reliable on the PK. If he can continue to improve his skating and become not just a good, but great skater for his size, then he could be a really difficult shutdown player on the back end. Simashev's high floor and projectable package of attributes make him a player who could potentially be selected in the first round. How early he is selected will depend on how much he can improve his offensive game, or how much offense a team thinks they can extract from him through proper development. There also were a few scouts going out there talking about Simashev's time in the MHL and how, even though he only had 10 points in 29 games, you could see that there was a very strong profile and that this guy was a literal man amongst boys. Sure, he didn't get the points, but that's mostly because he allowed other players, other defensemen on his team with more offensive skill get those points instead. Simashev just kind of decided, I'm going to be that shutdown defensive guy. I don't need to get the points because my game is already stable and valuable enough on its own with my ability to make sure the opposing team does not get the puck to my goalie. And so, when it comes to the way Simashev is able to defend, he already plays such a projectable game when it comes to shutting down opposition, closing gaps, playing alongside the boards, playing behind his own net, defending the rush. He is already the best in this class at doing all those things, and as the season has gone on, his KHL stint has started looking better and better. Now, he got slowed down by injuries towards the tail end, which kind of derailed his entire season, but still, at his best, DMITRI SIMASHEV could be a number one defender, but not the one that puts up number one defender type points. The one who has number one defender type minutes is what I'm talking about here. DMITRI SIMASHEV, if everything goes right, could be a 25, 26, 27 plus minutes per night defenseman with relative ease in the way he's able to move and shut down opposition. Some scouts have written about how he has a higher offensive game too, it's just he decides not to use it. And so if your NHL team is thinking to themselves, hey, we like how he plays, we like how he defends, but we see the offense in there. We see an activation gear that he's not yet really exploited in the way he's played in Russia so far, and we feel like we can bring that out of him, then I can understand if DMITRI SIMASHEV goes somewhere in the top 15, top 12, maybe even the top 10, depending on who you ask. Some scouting outlets have him at number 9, so it's possible. At the end of the day, though, DMITRI SIMASHEV is the best defensive-minded defender in this draft, and as a result, his floor is amongst the highest for all these defenders. David Reinbacher, Axel Sandin-Pellikka, we made the video about them yesterday. They're very good and very talented offensive defensemen, but I'd say that when it comes to NHL certainty, DMITRI SIMASHEV is higher than both of them. I'd go Simashev, Reinbacher, and then Sandin-Pellikka in that order in terms of NHL floor. Mostly because Sandin-Pellikka plays the most offensively dynamo-type style game, and you're not really guaranteed that that's going to translate to the NHL, especially for him who's a little bit smaller. Reinbacher, that Moritz Seider type, I think there's a lot of qualities that will translate really nicely, but DMITRI SIMASHEV, he has the highest floor, in my opinion. So, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your opinions about DMITRI SIMASHEV and his role in the KHL for Lokomotiv Yaroslavl? What are your thoughts about how he's played in the MHL? And what are your thoughts about this idea that he could be a top 10 pick, depending on who you ask? Are you aligned more so with that idea? Top 10? Do you think it's a little bit extreme? Okay, let's say top 15, top 16? Or are you in line more so with like Craig Button, who has him at number 49? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about DMITRI SIMASHEV and the prospect profile he possesses. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.